doing this series of ties. I also love painting. I saw this show at the Museum of Modern Art a couple of years ago of Picasso's sculpture. I don't know how many of you saw that, but for me it was life-changing. I'm not a huge lover of Picasso, but this was an incredible show. And it realized that the world of art and the things that we make and the things that we have at our fingertips are much broader than what we have learned so far, and that it's a constant, ever-expanding option that we have. And so I've decided now in my life, in these waning years, I figure I've only got probably another 30 good years left, that I'm going to do some things that nobody expects, including my good friends over here at this table. So anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Tutorial.
Yeah, here's the pointer.
So you point it up there.
And then that's the one to move them forward. And we'll just wait until it gets them on.
All right. Well, actually, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. So.
Don't worry.
But,
Want me to stand up here with you?
all right.
Okay.
Wait. That's Jordan's. That's Jordan's.
That's Jordan's.
I'll talk about it. That's all right. So, yeah, yeah, it was in the throes of my struggle when I real identity confusion, and I just kind of came out the other end and didn't want to keep repeating myself.
There we go.
All right.
It's almost going to come up on the screen. There we go.
There it is.
So.
There.
So this is a recent painting. I can.
Here's the best way to do it.
Okay, stand there.
Speak here, and you can see your image there.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, where were we? Certainly what William was saying about not wanting to repeat yourself, but yet we do because we're still the same artist. But so I suppose repeat ourselves with a certain variation. And it has to be growing and changing, though, in order to keep yourself interested as an artist. This is a painting that, based on a study that I had done of a very good model, Natalie, who posed in City Park. And it was raining on us, and she kept posing. And I just got a little study done and took a lot of photographs and put this in the studio, put it together a few years later, moved buildings around, made that City Park statue more like the Colossus of Rhodes, I think. It's not really that big. And my own high-rise building that I live in on the left. So, you know what? I really don't know what I'm thinking about when I paint. It's just not really thinking. I'm just kind of existing and functioning, and the conscious thoughts kind of come out of it. I mean, I'm conscious of, say, I think of you know, what would be an aesthetic preference of mine, but I don't even think about it too much. And like Kwong said, which I completely agree with, when I'm painting, I don't think about the art world whatsoever. Now, in recent years, I've heard that realism's coming back in style. That's kind of a laugh to me because we've been doing it long before it was in style, and we'll keep doing it long after it goes but right back out of style. You can, although in today's presentation, I see that it's increasingly a minor part of the art world. It makes no difference to me. I actually, what I was thinking of today as you were making your presentations was that I'm really quite a reactionary. I'm in the 19th century and Baroque and Renaissance, and that's kind of where I live. some ways, and it's not a good thing, but I'm kind of unaware of the real world. I like months later find out somebody I knew died, for example, or I go to work early, get home late. You know how you have a work-life balance? Don't have a life. So what's next? Clicker. Well, that happens to be on the roof of my buddy Kwong's high-rise building. And I was painting up there pretty long hours. It was a hot day, and it was turning evening. And so kind of what you see in the foreground is daylight, but the distance is twilight. It never really looked like that at all. It's a composite of all the hours. It looks like evening. I wasn't really conscious of forming that. All I really wanted was a composition that looked that just had some strength to it. And so sometimes I'm able, when painting out on location, I'm able to kind of encapsulate what would be one moment, but usually it's a composite of all the hours that have passed. So it doesn't look like any particular time, and it never looked this way at all. But I think that's kind of the job of the artist anyway, is to not just document, but to experience and internalize, and then put it back out there in some way, using your craft to the best of your ability. I do remember it was hot as hell, and it was a welcoming cool down toward the end. And this painting was done over on about 16th Avenue, approximately, I don't know, Steele Street, somewhere in there. Just for what it's worth, the sky was never that dark. But it's so much more interesting, I think, to me to have it that dark and to have kind of an isolated light on the house. I was concerned that the car would drive away at any minute. And that's part of what I like about it. It's a real balance. That's a work-life balance to my studio experience, which is by far most of the time I spend. I find them really much more attached to these little paintings that are done on the spot in a fraction of the amount of time. Say I would be there maybe 5 hours, and maybe fiddle with it sometime after that too. I'm more attached to them because they are they serve as a diary for me, and it helps me remember my life and distinguish one day from the next, and which I kind of can't do in the studio work because one piece may go on for 3 months, 6 months, and these I just kind of remember where I was going, how I felt, who I was talking to. The guy came out of the house, and he was really suspicious. He thought I was casing the joint and pretending to be an artist. And you get a variety of experiences like that are a lot of fun. I mostly find that painting, I like being a street painter. I have no identity whatsoever. Never had a show in my life. I'm here and then I vanish. And I kind of talk to people that are coming along who are not from the art world at all, and they have a really, mostly, unless there's a suspect of you, which is seldom, but they're usually just extremely appreciative of your efforts. And it means a lot to them that you think their street has some aesthetic properties that you would want to paint. These are two of my best buddies over on Federal Boulevard. They were never really quite, they were palling around together, but they weren't that close together. I've altered them to protect the innocent. Really, it's because I just start with an idea and I take it a different direction. I think you would recognize, if you saw them, you'd probably recognize them, but sometimes, if I want to change proportions, just because either through my own ineptitude or through, and say it comes out that way unintentionally, and I just, I kind of like that. Or sometimes I will really intentionally change proportions. About the subject, I don't really have a social statement to make. It's a judgment one way or the other. I do find the street people that they are incredibly interesting, just with the hardships written all over their faces. I certainly don't have any, any solution to the problems of homelessness. But I kind of sense that all of us are just about one synaptic lapse away from it. Just a little twitch mentally, and it could be us. And later, as I was completing, getting about halfway through the work, I realized it kind of looked like the Volga boatman of Repin. Does anybody know that? 19th century Russian painter. And he was leaning forward because actually he was using a walker, and his weight was put into that. But it could be as though he was pulling a rope, of a heavy barge through a canal. But that's really has nothing to do with it. It's just an afterthought. This painting was done down on Cherry Creek at Broadway, and you get just off the path, so cyclists don't mow you down. It kind of exaggerated the contrast a little bit, made the sky darker and the cement areas lighter, because I'm not really interested in complete fidelity to the scene so much as just making an interesting picture. And if it has any sort of meaning or content, then great. And if it doesn't, great. It just doesn't make any difference to me. I just love to try to make a strong picture. Seriously not interested in a statement. If you want to know my artist statement, it's what you see is what you get. I'm not anti-intellectual necessarily, but I just think that the simpler the better. Intellectually, I have a great passion for Renaissance painting, Baroque, and all of the history of art, and I was following the conversations closely. What we were talking about is, starting with Michael Polya, really that art, follows the prosperity throughout, Greece, Rome, the Persian empires, Egypt, Renaissance, Baroque, all the way up till now, and art congregates where the prosperity is. It's just because, in one sense, we depend on a functioning. Us artists depend on a highly functioning economy in order for it to have the luxury to provide us with the ability to do this work. And then what happens is the prosperity that attracted the art pushes it away because, as had been discussed, the real estate gets so high priced, the artists have to go somewhere else. That happens, in New York all the time. Migrations from Soho to Chelsea, and next maybe Williamsburg. I don't know. Well, this gentleman, I called him. It could be an affectation, I'll admit, but I kind of called him the prophet Ezekiel, the vision of Ezekiel. Partly just for maybe my own entertainment, it makes it. After the piece was done, I kind of figure out what it makes me think of. That's where the title comes. That the piece comes first and the titles come after, and sometimes you just can't think of a title. And having forgotten the guy's real name, I thought kind of maybe a delusional, semi-mentally ill person could actually be kind of a prophet in his own way. It's a certain madness. Floating heads. They did have bodies attached. Kwong had started his series of that, and I liked the idea, and I had to try it too. I've painted the ocean a lot, and I have a strong sense of how to paint waves. And little tiny ripples basically have the exact same light function as great big waves. The principles work the same. And I just randomly chose pictures at the last minute this morning and emailed them to Timothy's assistant, Emily. This painting, for what it's worth, it at one point had the whole skyline of Denver in there. It was a daytime scene. And, but it was too many values and colors. It took me a long time to figure it out. It exhibited in its earlier condition before. And it was too much going on. And it was that is a trap for artists. That if you're excited about all these things, sunrise on the buildings and so forth, but when you have too many values and colors, it's a guaranteed formula for garishness. And so painted over a lot of work. You kind of have to cut your losses. I think maybe this was a couple years later after it had been painted, and I painted the dark background, and I ended up liking it quite a bit better. This guy was waiting for a bus, and it gives the opportunity to engage in a short conversation, and they always need money, which is great, and in exchange for which I get to take pictures of them. The scene is on actually Colfax, and I had painted that a couple of years earlier, and then adapted that to the background of this guy. I had someone with me who held up a mirror with some blue plastic attached to it, which, and I had her, shine that right at the shadow side of his face, because you really wouldn't see this happening outside without, some reflected light source. But it's pretty hard to pull off by yourself. The guy actually, I made him look. He looks pretty intimidating, but actually he was kind of a lost puppy. Just appearances can be completely deceiving. He was kind of sad and lonely. It was couldn't be more opposite of the way it appears. That somehow the subject came up recently. I can't remember what the context was about whether or not artists are somewhat like their work. Or, I do know what it came from. It came from reading this long book about the life of Thomas Eakins called Eakins Revealed. Has anyone read that? Well, it's kind of it's extremely well researched, and I think everything the author said is true, except that he was interpreting that an artist is just like his paintings, and sometimes we are, and sometimes we couldn't be more opposite. For example, our buddy Gordon Brown's in here somewhere, and he, a long time ago, it became apparent that this quiet, well-mannered human being paints these wild, colorful things that would be kind of opposite of what you'd expect. And sometimes it does match what we're like. By the way, I can keep going on until I get thrown off. Or maybe I can't. That was it. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Hello. I'd like to thank Lynn and Timothy and the folks at FOPA and all of you for coming. And the critics in the morning and the gallerists right after. And it's been very, very rich. I feel like there's been lots of ideas and all kinds of threads that are waiting to be followed up. I mean, it's just been in everything that everyone's been showing, and there's all this stuff to, like, now what are we going to do with all of this, you know? And when the emails first started coming out about, this as a possibility and the different kinds of topics, one of the ideas that was floated was, what is it like for you as a working artist to be working in the Denver scene? What's the situation like for you? So I started thinking about that and thought that I would maybe share just a bit first with the show that was at the Arvada Center, looking back 40 years, and then there was upstairs that was looking forward. Do you remember? You seen that, right? I just thought that was just a tremendous show in the kind of scope that was being displayed. This is from the downstairs. And could we, oh, right, I got it. It's me. Do I introduce myself? Am I supposed to?
Go ahead.
I'm Jordan Wolfson.
Yeah.
I'm a painter. I got
This
it.
is the pointer of the tree.
Yeah, Jane, that's it. So this is also from the show. This is Homari Akita's work from he's at Habo Gallery. That was downstairs. This is Margareta Gilboy at Tina's gallery. Oh, 1 sec. This is from upstairs, from the looking forward. So downstairs you had looking back over 40 years of shows, and upstairs you had some newer, more contemporary kinds of work, and that I was less familiar with. This is Sandra Feddings, and it was installed onto the wall. This is Heather Patterson from Walker Fine Art. This is Daisy Patton, who shows with Michael Warren Gallery. And I was really struck by there was a difference between what was downstairs and what was upstairs. And I'd be sort of hard-pressed to kind of parse it out, but it felt like there was something, there was a different energy. And it was something that I've been mulling over with some friends and talking about it, you know. What was the difference between upstairs and downstairs? And one of the things, as I was thinking about what it's like to work as an artist in Denver, is that this, what I might call the downstairs, might be, in very general terms, more modern in terms of the kinds of expectations, aesthetic expectations that we have of the work. What was upstairs, we might call more contemporary. And that what I found in Denver were these different worlds, and we might say we have a more traditional world, a more modern, and a more contemporary world, something like this. And that I'd seen that sort of thing in different places. It's happening all over the world, you know. But that here in Denver, there was a collegiality that accompanied that. It's just wonderful. So that, you know, I'm fairly new here. It's been about 8 years, but meeting Kwong and meeting Daniel, and just the warmth that I didn't find in other kinds of places. I lived in Israel for some years, and so the Tel Aviv art scene was rather competitive and could be rather unpleasant in terms of the sense of friction between people. The New York scene. It wasn't as in your face, but you knew, that people were edgy in that way. And here, there's just this lovely warmth. And Keely Boyd, I think, mentioned it this morning, that with that smallness that we have here, it affords this kind of informality, ease, that something like this is happening. I mean, it's just lovely. And it came up in my mind also with the question of the art fairs, and the question, what could we put on an art fair, or in a sense, is the market here large enough to support something like that? And it might be a trade-off. Maybe we don't have the art fair, but we have the informality and the warmth and we have the friendliness of this kind of, enterprise that we have here. So this is a number of my pieces put onto one slide here, and I'll go through each of these a little, each one by themselves. They were shown recently at Gallery 1261 last summer, and I'll start out with, well, not necessarily in a more realist vein, but I'll work a motif over and over. So I'll take an interior or a still life, and I'll do it in different ways. And I don't think of, well, I don't start out polemically. I don't start out in my mind, I've got a statement that I want to say. I more just follow my inclination to work in different ways, and I enjoy juxtaposing the works together and the experience I have as I look from one to the next to the next. But looking back on one of the implications for me of the work is that while they function aesthetically, I try, of course, that I want each painting to hold formally, to have a strong aesthetic experience, that there's a kind of, I'm not sure if conceptual is the right word, but there is well, it's a big word, but a phenomenological kind of experience that I'm looking for that lends itself to under the conceptual rubric. And in a way, it also, for me, functions as a bridge between these different worlds that I think of as traditional, modern, and contemporary. I don't necessarily intend to do that, but when I'm looking at them in retrospect, I seem to think of them in that way. It's not so much a progression as much as perhaps like a tuner for a radio, and the different frequencies all exist simultaneously, and you kind of dial in, depending on where you're at. So, and each piece, these particular works are 34 by 30. And I work from observation. So they're all done from just direct observation. So I'll revisit the same motif, stand in the same place, and just shift in a way. It's like taking say a checkerboard, and sometimes you're playing chess, and sometimes you're playing checkers. Depending on, just how you set it up. So that's just seeing them all together.
Were they done in that order?
Yes, those were done in, yes. And then there are actually there's a couple that have been left out. It's a longer series that I'm still in the middle of. That I just keep throwing on another one and doing it again and doing it again, and And then here's a still life, a series of still life. And I started to come back to the still life and gradually take objects off of the table, kind of deconstructing the still life. So,